Hello, my name is Stafa, and we're going to be taking a look at the level design of this Portal 2 map called Fox, Goose, and Beans. The title of, or the name of this map is inspired by the classic kids math problem in which a farmer has a fox, a goose, and a bag of beans. There are other iterations of the same math problem. Can be like a fox, a chicken and feed, etc. And basically the premise of that math problem is that the farmer can only take one of those three items with him or her across the river on a boat and wants to take all three across. The issue is that the goose cannot be with either the beans or the fox alone, without the farmer, because the goose will eat the beans and the fox will eat the goose. So basically this map takes that math problem, that's the word problem, and basically I have two versions of this puzzle within this map. So basically I have in this, let's zoom in closer here, this first area where the player spawns out of, they have a cube, a ball, and another cube, and this second cube is behind a fizzler beam, and within this room there is a button for the ball and a button for a cube. So basically, the farmer is on this side of this imaginary river, or at least this tunnel represents the river, and the farmer has all three of these items, and the farmer wants to get these three items over here in this room. So the first objective for the player is to get all three of these two cubes and this ball over here into this room, and place a cube on each of these cube buttons, the ball on this sphere button, and the player stands on this weighted button, which brings down this platform. The platform will come all the way down. The player will stand on it to take them to the next section. We'll talk about that once we're finished talking about this first area. So basically, after lots of playtesting, this is the version of the level that I have at this point. Originally, this tunnel was one cube wide. So basically this whole wall was over here and this whole wall was over here, and this is how wide the tunnel was. In fact, these were white. So this is how it originally was, but after some playtesting I made this tunnel wider, mainly because I want this flipping wall to be visible. Also, in earlier versions, this elevator was right here, and so basically a big pole was kind of obstructing the view of this wall, which is important for solving the puzzle. So after the playtesting, I got this much wider tunnel. So basically the player comes in, and what they're supposed to do is get this cube onto this button, that circle onto this button, just to start things off. And what that does is it will basically, the cube will activate, let me turn this around, this set of lasers, and this sphere will activate this set of lasers. So And also, both of those together will deactivate this fizzler. Okay, and this cube, and just the cube, not both the cube and the sphere, but just the cube placed there, will flip this wall around, so it will become a white wall that the player can shoot a portal on. So at that point, they can create a portal here, create a portal anywhere on these walls, wherever they want to do, and basically go to the other side, because as I mentioned, both of these together will remove this fizzler wall. Let me select this. Yeah, this fizzler wall. And for those who are unfamiliar with the fizzler wall, you cannot take an object such as a cube or sphere through it, and you cannot shoot portals through it either. So even though these laser walls are activated by the time that both of these are pressed, it's perfectly fine, because the player does not need to walk through here. The player can just shoot a portal right here and walk through. So the player needs to bring the ball with them, because, as I mentioned earlier, Fox, Goose, and Beans. The Goose cannot be with the Fox or Beans. So imagine the Fox and the Beans being these cubes. I felt that indicating that the Fox and Beans being cubes and the Goose being a sphere would be a easy way to indicate which one's which, because the cubes can be together just as the Fox and the Beans can be together, but the Goose cannot be with the Fox and the Goose cannot be with the Beans. So player goes through their portal that they shot, let's say here, and through there. So they walk through here, bring the Goose or the ball over onto this button. This will deactivate this fizzler, so the player can go back through their portal that's they have right here, walk through, and get their Fox. And at this point, they can go back to the same portal that they have open, bring it back, and then they have two options. They can bring it onto this button or this one. This one, if they place on this first, they'll notice that absolutely nothing happens. This ant, the dotted line of this ant line will activate, and that's pretty much it. So the other option will be to place it onto this button, which they'll notice that the ant line will activate and it will flip this over. Now, a lot of my playtesters, they're thinking, okay, I got my ball, I got one of my cubes. How do I get the other cube over? After some, looking around, exploring, they realize, okay, this thing flipped over because of this cube being here, so they don't really need this ball anymore. They can bring it back. They have two options to bring it back. They can either go back through the same portal that they shot here, and the exits through wherever over here, or if they accidentally shoot a portal, let's say they shot the blue portal here and they accidentally moved the blue portal there, they can bring the orange portal over here and walk through there with the ball, go through this fizzler beam, and the ball will reset, come back over here. So they have a couple options as to bringing the ball back. So now that they got the ball back and they have the Fox or the Beans, let's just say the Fox, the Fox is over here, and this has flipped over, they can bring this back onto this button, which will deactivate the fizzler again, and now they can shoot a portal here and let's say another one there. And at that point they'll have to bring this Beans first, because this activates this laser. let me spin this around a little more. Yeah, this laser wall. So they can't get through there with the ball first. So they'll have to take the cube first. And then once they get the cube over, they'll just use the exact same portals that they shot to bring this ball over. So, you know, as I mentioned before, it's the exact same, you know, the solution to the whole math problem, the children's math problem with the fox, goose, and beans. So at this point, the player has all three items and themselves standing on this. This elevator will come down. As soon as they step off the button and onto the elevator, so the elevator will go back up because it needs all four of these buttons pressed to come down. Since only three of them pressed, it'll go back up. At this point, the player comes into this lovely room of turrets. And this is not exactly the hardest puzzle ever. There's actually multiple solutions to this room. None of the turrets are actually facing this cube. As you can see, I got them all selected, and absolutely none of them are facing the cube. You know, this one's facing away, as well as this. These are facing, you know, just around in a circle. So I have them all laid out in a symmetrical pattern, and they should not shoot the player if the player stays in this spot. So the player has multiple solutions here. The player can actually pick up, let's say, one of these turrets and use it as a shield and start smashing the other ones. That's probably the slowest solution. Another solution is if they have, let's say, their portal is down here, a blue portal. They can shoot an orange portal underneath each of these, which will send them into this room, which doesn't, you know, that's a totally fine solution. Or if they look up, they can see there's a few white squares that are directly above these jump pads, and these jump pads are all linked together, pretty much it'll make the turrets bounce around the room. So I mean, there's at least three solutions. Possibly a fourth one can be, let's say, put a blue blue portal here and an orange one underneath, and that will knock over the turrets one by one. So this area is basically for pacing. The player just had this difficult puzzle, and now I'm giving them a break. You know, you don't need to use your brain at this point. Just have some fun for a little bit before you get to the next puzzle. So after the turrets are cleared, this button will activate this gravity beam, and basically if the player goes on to just about any of these jump pads, it will launch them into the range of the gravity beam, which will take them through this tunnel. And once they exit through this hole, they'll fall through this fizzler beam. So, you know, basically the fizzler beam is so that if any of these turrets get caught in the gravity beam, which they can, and the player wants to bring one down with them, then the fizzler beam will pretty much destroy the turrets. So, you know, it's just to make sure that the player comes in to this room clean. So this is the final room. Let me get a better view. And this area, again, you got 2 cubes and 1 sphere. So you got the goose, bag of beans, and the fox. And basically, this area right here it's more complex than the first area, but it is easier because of the fact that it has a death hazards. Like there's this water down here that can kill the player. So because of the fact that this area poses a threat, it looks more threatening, it looks more complex, the puzzle itself is actually easier, especially since the player already figured out the first puzzle, or at least brute force their way through to somehow get through this puzzle. They come through here and are actually met by a somewhat easier but a more threatening looking puzzle. So what we got, let me get to here. So if the player brings the ball onto this button, they will see this ant line will turn orange and it will point at this gravity beam and nothing else happens. So the other option will be to bring the cube onto this button, and it will, there we go, it will turn on this gravity beam. So the player can ride the gravity beam over here. Ideally, the player should bring the sphere with them over here, but if they don't, they can easily ride this jump pad safely back to the beginning and bring the sphere with them. So let's say the player comes here, they bring the sphere with them, they place it on this button, and they will notice that this fizzler turns off. At that point, they can ride this jump pad back over here safely. And it took me several different versions of this level to come up with this jump pad. Earlier versions had just the beam to bring him back, and I found it quite difficult to set it so that the player has to have the cubes on one side and sphere on one side and still get the beam to work at a certain time. So I eventually changed it so that I had one of these. I had like this tram that basically would go all the way over here, and I'd have like a button. Yeah, there we go. I'd have this button, and it was like right there, so that the player, they can stand on here, press this button, it will take them back over to the other side. But the difficulty with this is that I couldn't make it come here and stop, because with this the options are seconds or infinite, so basically on and off, and I didn't really want that, because if it was seconds, then I'd have to time it perfectly, and that was very difficult to do. Also, if the player pressed this multiple times, the timer would basically reset. So let's say I've made this 7 seconds long. If the player kept on pressing this over and over and over, it would basically reset multiple times, so then maybe it might stop halfway through or something like that. So this was very difficult to deal with. So let me get rid of these things, undo all that, get that out of here, and remove that. So eventually I got to the point where I put this jump pad here. Now I don't want the player to use this jump pad at any time that they want, because I basically want them to only use it at one point, so that the player is forced to bring back the ball when they have the cube here or here. So basically, okay, the player has this the ball here, they come back, they ride the jump pad. This fizzler is now open because the sphere is in place, and they can bring this companion cube, the fox, back over there with them by riding this gravity beam again. So now was the tricky part was to figure out how to force the player to come back to this side with the sphere and leave the cube here by itself. So what I did is I put these folding walls. So let me deploy this just to show how these look. And I'll deploy this one as well. So as you can see, I have these deployable walls. I have 4 of them, 2 right here, 2 right there. Let me undeploy them. And basically, if this sphere and this cube are pressed together, then let me see what the connections are. So basically, this and that, these 2 deployable walls come out. Now, if this sphere and this cube are pressed, with their objects on them, then this wall and this wall come out. These deployable walls come out. So basically, this gravity beam gets blocked. This gravity beam over here gets turned on by this button. This button right here turns on this gravity beam, but it is blocked by these deployable walls. And if the gravity beam is off, so let's say that it's this button and this button, the gravity beam is not on, but this wall is out, the player, as you can see, the arc for the jump pad, it's obstructed by this wall, so they will literally just bounce off the wall and land back safely right here. So there's no leaving this area if they want to leave without the sphere and leave the cube here. So basically, if the player explores a bit and says, okay, let me see what happens if I take this sphere off and keep this here, because they notice that the gravity beam is on, these walls go back in, and they can take the sphere and ride the gravity beam back over here. And now their option that's left is to put the sphere on here, which turns this gravity beam into reverse, and now they can take the sphere that was on this cube, ride this gravity beam back, place it on this cube. Now let's talk about these 5 elevated pads. So basically, one of these, this button here, will make these 2 raise up. There's this gap right here is small enough for the player to jump over, but this gap, 2 squares, is not big enough for the player to jump over. Now if this button is pressed, then it will make these other 3 the other 3 platforms raise up. And as I mentioned before, this gap of 2 is too big for the player. So this bridge is not usable until all 5 raise up. So once the player has both of these cubes on the button, this bridge is now available for the player to just safely walk across, pick up the sphere, bring it back, and let me spin the camera around. It will make both of these sets of stairs. Let me deploy them just to show what they look like. And we'll make the sets of stairs deploy. So victory, the player is able to walk triumphantly up these stairs to their to the end. So I mentioned several changes I did to that first room and several changes I did to this room. I also had to like make sure that it was very one of my difficulties was to make sure that the player was never stuck at any time. Like the player cannot get stuck on this side of the room if they need something on the other side, or vice versa. You know, they can't get stuck over here and they left something over there. Oh, so also at one point in an earlier version of this level, basically this was like that, and I had a couple of playtesters ride the gravity beam while it was on reverse, go all the way over here, and then they were literally stuck. They had no way out because they can't go down to die, they can't get out. So this way they are able to get out here, and they won't be able to get stuck. So I mean, there's a lot of things connected to each other so that the ant lines don't look too great. The Portal 2 level editor can only do so much when there are multiple things connected to each other, and the signage, like these symbols next to the buttons, they get a little confusing because the fact that I have so many things connected to you know, one thing. Like for example, this button is connected to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the gravity beam would be 7. So at least 7 things connected to one button. But I mean, overall, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. It's solvable, and I feel like I got to the point where it's the most accessible to players, trying to guide the player to get to where they need to go. And I think importantly, the player cannot get themselves stuck. And that is definitely an important thing in this game, to not get the player to a point where they cannot move and cannot go back. So there we go. The next video will be a playthrough of this map. Thank you.